Hello everybody and welcome back to the Woodcrafts by Design shop. I'm Joshua Iverson. Today is March 21st, 2017. And this is my weekly video log series, a look at what goes on down here in the Woodcrafts by Design shop. Now this last week was a super hectic and exciting week for me in the shop down here. As I was editing last week's video log, just about to get it posted to YouTube, I got a phone call from a past customer. Now this customer, I built a kitchen, or I should say I built half of his kitchen last year, got it installed right before Christmas, and he decided, to basically do this kitchen in two halves. And when I had wrapped that up for him, he said he'd get back to me, May, maybe the end of April, May sometime this year. So he called me on Monday and basically said, "Hey, how are things going? I was over at the house Saturday," because the kitchen's going into his father's house. He's like, "Hey, we were over at the house Saturday and I ripped out the other half of the kitchen." So basically he wants me to do the other half of the kitchen now, which is kind of exciting and bumped up my schedule quite a bit. So Monday afternoon, because he was available and I was also available, I had the time, I ran down to his father's house to make sure I got all the final measurements now that the old kitchen has been removed, to make sure everything that I'm going to be building to go in now will jive with what's there. So, and he has some repair work. Apparently there was some leaking under a fridge or coming down behind the fridge or something, and there's a soft spot in the floor he's got to repair, and a couple other things that he needs to deal with before the kitchen goes in. But right now that's scheduled to be in before Father's Day, so sometime in May, June, whenever Father's Day is. So I have that job coming up, which is super exciting. And then I've also been in contact with another potential customer. I went down on Wednesday afternoon. I mentioned in my last vlog that another potential job I went to go see Wednesday. And through all that, saw the job. It's basically removing and refinishing 12 interior doors. The doors appear to be what I think is solid cherry underneath all the finish, and paint on some of them because somebody painted them. So got that bid, and he got back to me Thursday and said, "Hey, you got the job." So this week coming, this Wednesday, I will be going down to remove those doors to bring them back up here to refinish, since they need them immediately. So super exciting, picking up two pretty awesome jobs in the same week. So that's an exciting thing for me in the shop. Through all that, this last week, I was working on that solid walnut countertop as well. It was giving me some problems. Even somebody that's done this for years and years can still have issues. This is a prime example of that. Mostly what I spray here in the shop for finish is a pre-catalyzed lacquer for like cabinetry and stuff, called Magnamax. Now with this countertop, I didn't use the Magnamax, I used Crystal, which is another product made by M.L. Campbell. It's a high solid finish, but it's a post-catalyzed conversion varnish. And what that means is basically you have to mix you have to mix the crystal with a catalyst before you spray it, so that way it does its thing, and when it goes, it flattens out. It gets super flat and gets really hard. Crystal was made with the intention for kitchen cabinets in really moist, warm environments. It seals really well. It's a very durable finish, and it's what, when I worked for another shop, we sprayed on like commercial bar tops. So that should tell you how durable it is. Even the manufacturer, M.L. Campbell, recommends that this can be used on floors. It's that durable. So so I got a gallon of Crystal and a catalyst for this particular top, this countertop that I was doing. And the first couple of coats went really well. I majorly thinned it down. It was almost thinned 1-to-1. Dealing with walnut, I wanted to make sure that all the little tiny pores in the wood got filled, so it had a super smooth finish and you didn't have that little open pore kind of texture on the countertop, which can cause stuff to get stuck in it, dust and things, which isn't good for a countertop. So I gave it several good coats, basically thinned 1-to-1, which sealed it really well. And then after that, I went basically straight to, because it's not recommended that you, or it says you shouldn't, I should say shouldn't, it says thinning is not required to spray crystal. So when I went to do the next coat, which should have been the final coat, I got it sanded really well, all the way up 320 grit. I even used a random 5-inch random orbital sander on the top with 320 grit and got the top super smooth, real nice, flat, and everything. And then I sprayed the final coat, which was just basically straight crystal, um, and it didn't turn out as what I was hoping. The crystal did its job. It went on super smooth, went on flat, but for some reason or another, I was getting little, like, chunkies in the finish itself that lended to not look very nice, and it didn't feel very nice when you rubbed your hand across the top of the countertop. So I spent a good chunk of Saturday afternoon cleaning the gun really, really well, doing the best I could to get as much of the crud that would come loose out of the gun out of there, so that way Saturday evening I sanded down the top one last time really well. Because if you get crystal, if you spray it on too thick without letting it dry very, very thoroughly, the finish can actually build up thick enough that it will actually shatter the finish because it gets so hard. Um, I don't think we got it that far, because every time I ran into the problem, I took it back to the table, hit it with the random orbital sander to take it down to another, basically down quite a bit to put a new coat on. So I don't think there's any real problem with this top shattering on me. But Saturday evening, decided to spray it just a little bit heavier than I have been, and basically wound up with a really good coat that only had like one or two little chunkies in it, which are not a big deal. There's a point of diminishing returns on some of this stuff, and you can only get it so good to a certain point. But that happened Saturday evening. Sunday, I spent time with the family, did stuff, and then Monday I actually installed the countertop first thing Monday, which turned into kind of an all day away from the shop kind of a deal. So that's why I'm shooting the vlog today and not yesterday. Anyway, that's a look at this past week. Now I want to wrap this up with something that didn't happen in the shop here. It was something that I did outside the shop with my family. And I'll preface this by saying everything that was done legally through proper channels. So there's no reason to get all up in arms about what I'm going to be talking about next. Friday evening, we had a get-together, my family and my wife's family. We had dinner together. And during that dinner, my wife's family had notified me that they were planning on burning down the neighbor's house. Now, the neighbor's house that they were referring to is a property that they had purchased many, many years ago, actually before my wife and I had even met. It used to belong to an older gentleman who is no longer with us. He basically got to a point with his age and his abilities that he had to go into a nursing home, and was there for a couple of years and didn't really live much longer past that. So, but when they got the property, it was an all-inclusive thing. They bought the property, everything that was on it was included. So all the building structures, dilapidated cars that were sitting there, they all became basically my in-laws' problem. And through the years, we've been slowly cleaning up the property. Now, on the property, still standing, there's a couple of structures. There's a couple of sheds, one big shed that was kind of a bunch of little sheds that are all conjoined. Those are to the point where they're dilapidated and just the roofs are falling in, and we're going to be taking care of those someday in the near future. But the big structure we had to deal with was the house itself. When the neighbor had gone into the nursing home, the particular house that he was born and raised in, he was living in, was so dilapidated already when he moved out that it just wasn't a good structure anyway. And they had gone in after they had purchased the property and took everything out of the house that was of any value or important to anybody. This gentleman had a lot of memorabilia of his own that we got out of the house, to make sure it didn't get destroyed. But the house remained standing. We were trying to figure out what to do with it. A couple of years ago, we finally decided the house had to go, and we're worked towards getting rid of it. And so we had like the electrical connection completely removed from the house, so it wasn't a problem. Any other utilities like that were completely disconnected. Um, but I was notified Friday that they were planning on burning down the house. We were waiting for a kind of a big snow to come in to make sure everything was soaking wet and had snow everywhere, kind of helped contain the fire. And we weren't getting that snow, so we just decided it was supposed to rain Friday night, that it was good enough. There was still snow on the ground from other things, just not the amount we were hoping for. So we proceeded to go ahead and to burn the house down. Now, like I said, we notified the local fire chief of our intentions. He said go ahead. And we notified the 911 dispatch for our local area that we had a structure fire scheduled to be burned down. So that way, if anybody saw it from across the lake or driving down the road, called it in, they'd say, well, yeah, there was a structure fire. It's already been called in. It's being taken care of. So everything is done legally. Now here in Pennsylvania, this is just how we remove houses, buildings that are no longer needed, or basically to the point where they're no longer salvageable, as in the case of this house. This house, because the structure was still standing, it caused the taxes on the property to be increased. So that's another reason why the house was being removed, why we burned it down, because now that there's no longer a house structure there, the property tax will go down. So the benefit of burning it down was outweighed the cost, the benefit of leaving it up, which basically was zero anyway. So we got into the house as safely as we could. Like I said, it's falling in on itself. We got in and we started the fire sort of in the middle of the house the best we could, so that way it would burn from the inside out and kind of just collapse on itself, which it did. So all in all, it took about 2 hours for the house to burn and collapse in on itself. So the only thing that was standing after it had pretty much collapsed was the chimney on the one end of the house. And then I was notified that Saturday morning that it had actually fallen over into the basement, like the rest of the house did. So it's pretty much done and taken care of. So just an interesting experience. I don't wish a structure fire on anybody. We just had a house fire in the community here not too long ago where the individuals lost their home. They actually lost their pets in the fire. I don't wish a house fire on anybody. My wife's family, my in-laws particularly, have had to deal with 2 house fires in their lifetime, and it's not a fun thing. So I'm not taking this lightly. I'm just saying, I'm just sharing the experience that I had with you guys. So it was an interesting thing to do. Not many people, it's one thing to watch a structure fire. It's another thing to actually participate in one. If you have any questions or comments about the structure fire or anything else I talked about in this video, feel free to leave those below. I'll try to get to those. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you like this video series or any of the other series that I have on this channel, feel free to hit the subscribe button. Then you'll be notified of any future videos that I post. And until next week, keep making sawdust, and I hope to see you then. Bye.